Katryn, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kat, thank you for having me as your guest.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted you are here. I did a little research and I found that you've had a very long and successful career. Could you please tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself and how you came to do the work that you do?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm a native Nashvilleian. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, 61 years now. We're three generations deep here. Started my first business when I was 18, sold out to a Fortune 500 when I was 27. And since then, we've had about 13 or 14 businesses over the course of 43 years. Married to Robin for 42 years, a couple of daughters, 5 grandchildren. And today I'm probably having more fun than ever before and helping entrepreneurs really accomplish their goals and dreams. And so I retired 11 years ago, and a mastermind group that I've participated in for decades here in Nashville, Dave Ramsey and Dan Miller, a couple of the members in that, and they encouraged me to coach. And so I started coaching. And today we lead masterminds, as you've already pointed out, to members in about 7 different countries around the world now. So we're having a great time helping people become very successful and significant in their own right.
Oh, I love that. And I appreciate that. I mean, you sound like you have done so much, and you've been married a long time and had a lot of businesses. So this is like your retirement project, your coaching business and helping people and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, Robin says I'm working more now than I've ever worked in my career. So, but I love it more than anything because it's not about me. It's about a transformational experience that's going on in the lives of other members. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this part of my life.
Love that. And I think enjoyment and fun really make it more, or can enhance what we do. You coach, I read, about 20 mastermind groups per week. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I don't coach all of them personally. I facilitate
okay.
7 of the groups. I'm in another group. And so, yeah, we have facilitators that we do revenue share with that leads the groups, people I've trained and taught how to lead the groups very successfully. We created a framework years ago called the Mastermind Playbook. And it is something that really is life transforming to the people that experience this level of accountability, transparency, vulnerability. They really come with the attitude of subjecting themselves to the scrutiny of the members that are in the group so that they can catapult their life to a different level.
I appreciate that you shared that, because I was going to ask you, like, what makes a mastermind group so much more vital than just one-on-one coaching? Like, how can that really help people with their accountability and that vulnerability, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think that there's causes and needs for different avenues of accountability. Coaching historically is for a very specific topic for a very specific time frame. Historically, masterminds are lifelong, can be. I mean, I've been in groups for decades, and people really get to know you intimately. They really can help you then. And what I mean by that is that I come to you one day and I said, this is what I think you should do on this situation. If I didn't know anything about your history, didn't know anything about your spouse or your children or your aspirations or any of your goals or any of your dreams or what your historical data is and your skills, I didn't know your superpowers, I didn't know your kryptonite, I didn't know your blind spots, I certainly don't know how I could give you advice that would be beneficial for you specifically. And that's what masterminds bring to the table. When you intimately go through that each and every week, then I can give you advice that will be beneficial.
I love the sound of that, because it's not a cookie cutter approach. Like, you really are caring and getting into what's making that individual tick, right? So that you can help them catapult. I love that you use that word. And I find that that's different from a lot of people that I've encountered in this industry. Like, that's a really special, unique touch that you.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. My dad used to say every tub should sit on its own bottom, right? And that's the way it is in our life. Our lives are not cookie cutter, right? You have circumstances and situations in your personal life that if I were to give you a generic response, it may not be most beneficial for you specifically. And so we want to give advice that helps you as an individual.
I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing it. When I was doing some listening around, I read that, the title of one of the masterminds is Iron Sharpens Iron. And coincidentally, I was interviewing another woman a few weeks ago, and she used that phrase, and she said her grandmother used to tell her that. And I was wondering if you'd share with the viewers and myself, What's the meaning behind that and where does it come from?
Yeah, very good question. I'm Christian by faith. And in
Okay.
the book of Proverbs 27, chapter 27, verse 17, it says, as one man sharpens another, as iron sharpens iron. And so we need people around us on an ongoing basis that can challenge us. They can challenge our thoughts, our processes, our systems. They can just challenge us in a way that nothing else could, because if they're not asking direct, specific questions, and oftentimes we use the analogy of sparks are flying because iron is sharpening iron, right?
Mm.
Metaphor, obviously, but there's a lot of truth in that, because when you're walking daily with someone, they can ask you those very pointed questions that can really heighten your awareness to your present situation and call you out. They can call you to task. They can throw a flag when you're really operating outside of what your core values are. And so that's the reason we call it iron sharpens iron.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I have the image of the sparks flying when the iron is sharpening. So I thank you for sharing the background on that. What was the fire or the sparks that fueled your personal business success earlier on in your life?
When I was young, I grew up in a very poor family. I have great parents. My mom and dad were amazing, but my dad didn't care anything about, making a lot of money, living in a big house. And it was kind of the motivation for me of, I don't know what I want, but I do know I want to do a little bit better than what I've experienced thus far. So it kind of lit a fire in me and said, hey, you can go for it if you want to go for it. And I met a gentleman once that told me, he said, God put it out there equal for everybody. All you've got to do is reach out and get a piece of it. And I've never forgotten that. And I thought, I actually went to summer school and night school for 18 months when I was, a sophomore in high school, and was able to graduate at the beginning of my junior year in high school. So I didn't have to go my junior and senior year. Didn't go to college. I started a business literally right out of high school. And people say, well, how did you do that? You were poor. Well, I went and found a couple of partners that had a lot of money. I gave up 2/3 of the business. I put in sweat equity. And then we built a business that a Fortune 500 bought 9 years later. And I had rather have 1/3 of something as to have 100% of nothing. And so I was willing to give up 2/3 of the business in order to get a start. And what that's allowed me to do is have other opportunities. And now, I don't know, I think this is our 14th business over 43 years. But you got to start hard at the bottom. You got to do your reps. You got to have that grit and determination not to fail. You've got to have the desire in your heart that you want better. And if you're hearing my voice today, you have those same abilities, same rights to exactly what I've gone after.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, what you shared about everyone has that ability if they choose to tap into it or believe in it. And it, the grit piece really resonates with me, and the desire. So that's very poignant. And I think anyone can, if they're hearing you and they really want that for themselves. I wanted to ask you, because in listening to some podcasts, I heard you say of your mother that she made you pay rent at the age of 18. And I really appreciate that. Why do you think it's so important to gift our children those lessons and responsibilities so early on?
Yeah, I'm appreciative now. I wasn't appreciative then. I didn't care for it
I
a
love
bit.
that.
But when I got out of school, I turned 18 years old. I was still living at home. My mom came to me and she said, starting today, you're going to pay $125 a month in rent. And I'm like, what? I'm like living at home. And she said, yeah, it's not that we need the money, but you need the experience and the practice. And so you're going to start paying $125. And I said, okay, I'll do that. But just to be honest with you, if I'm going to do that, I'll get married and move out. And that's exactly what I did. So I paid rent for about 6 months. And I thought, if I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to really be on my own. My mom was a huge inspiration for me when I was a kid. I went to her with this business opportunity initially and said, what do you think? She goes, go for it. Go out on the limb. You want to go out on that limb just before it breaks. You want to risk. You want to have better. You want to do better. You can do this. I believe in you. I'm proud of you. And I'm encouraged by your efforts. And man, it really gave me that self-esteem. It really built me up to where I thought, hey, my mom believes in me. I can do this. And so I went out and did exactly that. And it was hard. Kat, I don't want to say that it was easy. It wasn't. It was hard. I mean, there was a lot of days that I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And, you know, I had to work. I've literally worked around the clock, like washed up in the sink in the back room, change clothes and stayed the rest of the day, do stock work at night and open our retail outlet during the day. We would go out on the weekends, Robin and I, after we got married, and we would put these flyers on windshields of cars in Kroger parking lot. And we go to mailboxes and put these flyers in, knock on the door in the community and say, hey, we want you to come down and check out our new store. And we did that day after day, week after week, month after month, until we built up enough momentum to have business. And then God just really blessed it. And he opened the floodgates and he just said, hey, listen, you can be trusted. You're a good steward over what I've entrusted you with. And then we opened multiple stores, and it was just, but we had to start somewhere. And a lot of people today don't want to start out doing the reps. They don't want to do the hard work. They don't have that grit and determination that I'm talking about right now, because people make it look so easy online. I'll make $1 million and work 4 hours a week. Well, I mean, Tim Ferriss wasn't really suggesting that we only work 4 hours a week. You know, that's not what he was saying. But once you go through the trials, once you go through the fire, once you've been refined, once you really put in your time, you do have the ability to build systems and processes to develop businesses where you can work less. You can have a lifestyle business, but it doesn't start that way. And I want to challenge the listeners that are listening to me today. Have that fire burning in your belly that says, I want better. And I'm willing to sacrifice and delay gratification for a later date, so that Dave Ramsey, like he says, today you live like no one else, so tomorrow you can really live like no one else. And that's what we were willing to do.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it puts things in perspective for people, you know, that you do have to start somewhere and start with that grit and determination and be consistent and willing to sacrifice. And it's not always easy. It's not always like glimmer and fanfare. You just, you know, it's work. And like when we can love our work, it really helps, I think. But I appreciate you sharing that. Do you think there's a way to help shift that perspective for people? Like, I know what you just shared, but on a bigger scale, that they really have to show up, or it's important to show up for themselves consistently if they want those other things, you know, like how do we really get that message out there more about showing up consistently?
Yeah. Here's what I've found over the years, coaching hundreds of people and doing thousands of interviews and thousands of blogs. It's a mindset shift that we have to have. And what we've got to do is develop a real yearning desire to add value. And when we develop that, the sales will happen. I tell people all the time, quit trying to make the sale and try to figure out how you can add more value. And then the sales will come. And so we have to get into a framework or a position or a mindset that says, I wonder what I can do today in order to add value to my clients, whether you're selling a widget or whether you're providing a service. It's like, who can I connect them to? What resources can I give them? How can I make their life better? And I'll tell you, I didn't really understand this when I was young. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I didn't understand this. But what heightened my awareness was August the 1st, 2001, which is now 20 years ago. I was headed to the office on a Wednesday morning, and I ran over and killed a pedestrian that was crossing the street. And my life literally come to a screeching halt that day. I had very successful companies. I had a place on the beach, a place in the mountains, a big house, fancy cars. I had all those things. But all of a sudden, I was like, man, how in the world did this just happen to me? And I had to think through, like, started thinking through, you know, is this my main best use of my time? Am I doing the things that's really going to matter? And what dawned on me is that I had been creating a legacy. And the legacy that I had been creating wasn't interesting to me. The legacy that I had created up until that point was a kid that was very poor, made enough money to retire at age 27, and nobody cares. And I'm like, man, that is not the legacy that I want to live. I mean, the legacy that I want to live is that Kat's life is better because of our interaction. Like, Kat's life is better now because I've connected her, inspired her, and motivated her to take another step to help or motivate other people, to help them accomplish their dream. And what I discovered is that I had all this success and nobody cared but my family. I had no significance in my life whatsoever. And I thought, how can I have significance? Well, significance is really determined by the lives that you help other people. The success is only about yourself. And so I actually wrote a book called View from the Top, and it's how to live a successful and significant life. And today I invest about a third of my time trying to give back. I just got off of a show that I do every Tuesday called Tuesday Noon Live. And it's not something you pay for. You come, I teach, I instruct, I encourage other people, I give you resources, we make connections. And it's not to sell you anything, it's to help you accomplish your goals and dreams, because I'm a firm believer that if you give and you give and you give, the natural reciprocity out of that, other people are going to want to help you as well. The irony of that mindset is that we're a lot more significant today, and we're probably more successful financially than we've ever been because we have it in the right order. And so if you're hearing my voice today, I want you to think through, what value are you adding to the clients that you're serving? And if you do that properly, you'll have the right mindset.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really great question for us to ask ourselves, like, what value can I add? And I appreciate you being here and adding value to this show and to my life by sharing that. You come across as very sincere and, compassionate towards other people. And I don't know the experience that you described that you went through, if that shaped some of that more for you. Why is it important then to help others, not just help them, but help them with sincerity of intention? Because sometimes we help and it's not as altruistic, but when we come to it with that really sincere part of the adding value, why does that make so much of a difference? Like, do people feel that?
I think it goes back to, we genuinely have to live in a community to where we put the value of others, primarily our family, friends, peers, colleagues, at the forefront of our thoughts. We live in a very selfish environment overall. If you think about it, people's motivation historically is always to get something. And if you'll have conversations with people, you can pay attention to this, because you'll be interacting with people and you can tell they're really not listening. They're not making eye contact. They're looking around to see who is in the room. They don't make that eye contact and really dive deep into what you're interested in and try to help you solve that problem. They're thinking about what they're about to say and what benefit it could be for them as an individual. Oftentimes you'll get a phone call and it'll go like this. It'll go, "Hey, Big A, how's it going?" "Going good. How are you?" "Fine." "Robin, good. Kids good. Business good." "Hey, while I've got you on the phone, let me ask you a question." And I'm like, now we're getting down to why you called me. It wasn't about checking on me. You're always wanting something. That's what people do. Let me give you a tip. Those that are listening to me today, call people because you care. Call people and say, "Hey, Kat, how's it going today? How's your spouse? How are your children? How is business? Anything I can do to support you? Any resources you need? Any connections you need?" "No, I'm good." "Okay, let me know if I can help you." And you hang up and you go, "Man, Big A was really interested in me." Like, he was asking, he didn't even ask for anything. He didn't ask to borrow the chainsaw or a gallon of milk. Like, he really wanted to know how he could help me. It makes an indelible impression on people. Now we're getting down to building relationships. And for us, our first core value is relationships matter most.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're dealing with people. And if you can really take a genuine perspective, you really have a pure motivation in their interest, you'll get all you need. You just got to be a giver and not a taker.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that resonates with a lot of people. Do you ever think there's a point, though, that we could give too much? Is there a line between, I'm a giver too, but where we overgive?
Yeah, sure. People are going to take advantage of you. That's just the cost of doing business. And I'd rather err on the side of giving too much than not giving at all. And so are you going to be taken advantage of? Yes. If you're hearing my voice right now, you will be taken advantage of. No question about it. But what had you rather be remembered for? The person that sucked the life out of the room and only called you when they needed something, or the person that gave too much? I'll err on the latter instead of the former.
Thank you. That's something for me to sit with, and I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to ask you, one of the things that came up when I heard you talking about some of the culture that we live in is not just this instant gratification that people have and they're not listening, but I also feel like sometimes we live in a culture that's very judgmental. And then they're very quick and they don't pay attention. Do you think that there's any, does that resonate with you at all? And is there a thought where, I mean, sometimes we have to judge, so we can make a decision. Is there a distinction for you between judgment and discernment?
Oh,
in dealing with
absolutely.
people?
Yeah. As I said earlier in the interview, I'm Christian by faith. And so there's a book called the Bible that I live my principles by. And so I'm not the judge. God did give me good business discernment. He gave me the ability to make adequate decisions related to the context of the situation. And that's not judgment, right? That's making a discernment. That's making good decisions based on some principle. Now, if you don't have any line in the sand, you don't have anything to reference, then anything goes. And so for me, our last core value, I have 5. Our last one is truth before opinion. And so for me, truth is based looking through the biblical lens. Like, I'm not the judge. I didn't write the book. Take it up with the author, but the truth is that's where I make my decisions from. And if you don't have a baseline, what are you making your decisions around? And so I think everyone has to make a decision by how they're going to make decisions. And for me, it just happens to be the Bible.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you're right. We all have to have a baseline. It might be different from yours, might be different than mine, but if we don't have that baseline and that foundation to ground us, it is hard to make decisions that are really powerful for ourselves. I really appreciate you being here today and taking some time with us. Are there any, or you mentioned you had 5 core values before we go. Would you like to share all 5 of them with us?
Oh, sure. I'll be happy to. Yeah. Thank you for asking. First of all, thank you for having me as your guest. I've enjoyed being here. Our core values, the first one is relationships matter most. And that's in everything that we do, whether it's our family or whether it's in business. Relationships always matter most. The second one is make it amazing. If you're going to do it, be willing to do it right, or don't do it. The third one is no excuses. I don't like excuses because that's exactly what they are. And so go out there and make it happen. The fourth one is everything is figure outable, because if there is a will, there is a way. And then finally, truth before opinion. And I look through the biblical lens to find my identity, not in my possessions, not in my power, not in my ego, but I use the biblical lens for all the decisions that I make.
Those are great. I love those 5. And I love that you are so convicted in your lens. And I really appreciate that about you. Is there anything you'd like to leave our viewers with? Any final words of wisdom before we come to a close?
I appreciate that. This final go through, I wrote View from the Top, and in it, the first chapter is titled Can't, Couldn't Do It, but Could, Did It All. I think it's a mindset that we've got to adopt, that if you really want to do something, you can do it. Most people are held back by fear. And what they're most afraid of is that they're going to fail. And I just simply would say fear missing an opportunity more than you fear failure. Have a mindset of you can do something, and success and significance will also come your way. Every Tuesday we get the distinct privilege of leading, helping, and coaching. As I said earlier, you're not going to be asked for anything. There's not going to be a sales pitch. But if you're interested in participating at no charge, it's free. We do it every single week. Go to tuesdaynoon.live, Live, tuesdaynoon.live. Sign up. Let us reserve a seat for you. And each and every week, I do something similar that we've done today on your podcast. And I would love to have your listeners join us.
Oh, I love that. I would love for you to be able to pour into them. That sounds really inviting. Thank you for sharing that. We touched on so many topics, and you already touched on legacy a little bit. That was going to be my final question for you, but you shared a little. But what do you want your legacy to be? Is it to add value to someone's life? Is it,
I can summarize it in a sentence, and it's that I want your life to be better as a result of interaction with me.
Thank you. If everybody came with that type of mindset, I think the world would be a much happier, joyful place to live in. Erin, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and you being here. If someone found themselves at a crossroad or a choice point and was tied up in that fear, what would you say to them invite them to do for a next step for themselves?
Yeah, I would just say first and foremost, Carol Dweck wrote a great book called Mindset. In that, we learned that there's two distinct mindsets. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. You need to adopt a growth mindset to help you work out of any situation, anything that's problematic in your life, you can work through with a growth mindset. So go get Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, and it'll take you to the next level.
Awesome. That's great. And if the book alone doesn't help, I would invite people to reach out to a community like yours or a community they feel safe in to help them overcome those fears and keep moving forward.
We would love to have you. We would love to have you. Check us out at viewfromthetop.com. But more importantly, go to tuesdaynoon.live and join us every Tuesday as I teach and give you life's principles to live by.
That's great. tuesdaynoon.live. So for our listeners, if you like what was heard on this episode, if you got something out of today's conversation with Erin, show him some love by visiting his website,